Welcome to PIC's Global Compass, the podcast where we explore the most pressing issues in international relations and foreign policy. I'm your host, Koena. Today, we turn our attention to water, a resource that sustains life, shapes borders, and as recent events have shown, can become a focal point for conflict and diplomacy. The Indus Waters Treaty, signed in 1960 between India and Pakistan and brokered by the World Bank. It was designed to govern the use of the Indus River system's 6 rivers: Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas, and Satluj. The treaty gave India rights over the 3 eastern rivers, Ravi, Beas, Satluj, and Pakistan over 3 western rivers, Chenab, Jhelum, and Indus. But the world has changed since 1960. Population growth, climate change, and most recently, the Pahalgam terror attack and Operation Sindoor have brought the treaty back into spotlight. To unpack these questions is the director of Pune International Center, Major General Nitin Gadkari, a leading voice on strategic affairs. Additionally, you might not know this, but he had once written a paper on how to use the IWT as a weapon, but not to abrogate it. So he's the best person to give us some insights on the IWT. General Gadkari, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Koena.
So, sir, starting with the first question, the most important question to set the context. India shares river systems with its other neighboring countries. Why was the Indus Waters Treaty so important to be signed between India and Pakistan? What brought these two countries together for such a mechanism?
Okay, Koena, firstly, thanks for getting me on the show. And you've got a very important subject that you're dealing with here. It has ramifications it had in the past, present, and future. So one of the principal reasons that we had to get into an IWT was because of the partition of India in 1947. Till that time, the rivers were flowing seamlessly through the land, which is India and Pakistan, and there was no need for any distribution. But once we were partitioned, 2 neighbors, 2 countries, obviously there had to be some mechanism by which the new country, Pakistan, would get its fair share of water. Nothing like that existed. And with the acrimony and the partition horrors that had happened, it was but natural that the 2 countries were enemies to each other. And thereby, making water as a weapon even at that point in time. And it did become. India being the upper riparian, the one which is receiving the water first, had all the advantages and the opportunities to stop water going into Pakistan, hypothetically and theoretically. And that was the reason why Pakistan was insisting that it get its fair share of water being a new country. Now, since nothing existed, something had to be built. One of the principal reasons why it actually came into effect was in 1948, there was a disagreement between East Punjab, which was on our side, and West Punjab. Now, Punjab being a land which was agriculture in nature, had water at the base of its economy. So people in West Punjab controlled, I would say, stopped, could be another way, water's going into East Punjab, water going to West Punjab, which raised alarms in Pakistan. And they ran towards the UN and the world bodies and agencies. That led to a realization both in India as well as in the World Forum that some permanent mechanism needs to be put in place for an amicable distribution of a natural resource. And that took 10 years to actually evolve. What started in 1949 or 50 actually happened in 1960. And that is how the need for Indus Water Treaty came.
Okay. So do you have any idea if there exists another such treaty around the world anywhere?
So there do exist. In fact, my search brought me to this answer that there do exist. But the gravity of IWT does not apply to any other neighbors. Primarily because Pakistan depends entirely on the Indus rivers for its survival.
Yeah.
All of the neighbors have, most of them do not have a treaty but understanding. And very few neighbors are as inimical to each other as India and Pakistan.
That is the base.
So that is the base of this.
Yeah, the enmity is the base. So could you walk us through what was actually in the treaty? What did the treaty envisage? What were the provisions made, etc.?
Yeah, so, if you put yourself in the shoes back then, it was a very difficult proposition to create a standard of distribution of water, what is fair and what is unfair. There is no standard, there is no datum, there was no precedences. And that is how the World Bank got into place. And that is one of the reasons it took 10 years. In 10 years, once it was decided that it will happen, hydrological engineers from both countries worked tirelessly to collect data as to how much water flows through the rivers which flow from India into Pakistan, just to find out as to how much of water is going in and how much can be given. Yet, despite the data they had, it would have been impossible to monitor how much water goes in. And that is where they came to a very simplistic geographical formula that 6 rivers were going into Pakistan from India. Let's distribute them 3 each. It was a geographical split, but I think the cleanest way to find a solution to the problem. That time it was envisaged that out of the 6, 3 will flow into Pakistan and 3 will remain with India. And that is why the rivers which were on top, actually called the Western rivers, they all went into Pakistan and the water was allowed to go into Pakistan. Whereas all the rivers which are in the south or called the Eastern rivers, that water was exclusively reserved for India and not meant for Pakistan. This was the base of the treaty, that water from Western rivers goes there, apart from that, there were many other sections of the treaty, like how do you dispute mechanism? How do you monitor it? Where do you take it? Would there be a mechanism to exit or not? All those became part and parcel of this. One of the principal component of this treaty was dispute mechanism. It had a 3-tier dispute mechanism. I don't know whether you have a question on that or not, but I could explain that later. But 3-tier, so that there is a method to solve a problem which could exist between 2 neighbors. And in fact, that was the base of the treaty which has allowed it to exist till now. Today, as it stands, that 3-tier mechanism is under question. The 3 rivers which are going on the western, that is from the north, they have a total of 135 MAF, million acre feet of water which goes into Pakistan. And the eastern rivers which are on the south, they have a total of 33 MAF which go into India. So the western rivers had 80% of this water, and eastern rivers had 30% of it. The origins of all these rivers, by and large, in Tibet, Himachal Pradesh of India. That is the glaciated regions, Himalayan regions. So every river had its origin from there, yet the northern rivers, or the western rivers as I call them, they had almost 80% of the flow. And I'm sure there are many questions based on this, arithmetic distribution. You can ask me, I'm happy to answer.
So you mentioned India being an upper riparian state. So what sort of leverage does India have theoretically, it being an upper riparian state, in this Indus Waters Treaty?
It's God-given, whether you're an upper riparian or geography. But yet you will appreciate that water is a natural resource and everyone has the right to water. And that is the basis of understanding relations between upper riparian and the lower riparian. The upper riparian geographically merely has the advantage of water flowing through its land first and then going into the lower riparian country. The advantage is accrued out of this. There is no advantage that is written anywhere, but you draw that advantage by using the water more, less, stopping it, flooding it, or not giving information adequate to the lower riparian. India has all that advantage. But the treaty per se addresses all of them, where it makes the upper riparian, even there is a UN agreement on that. The upper riparian has certain duties to perform, that it will not hold that natural resource unfairly, more than its own usage. Second, it is duty bound to inform the lower riparian the state of fluctuation of the water. Like in case of heavy rains, if it is going to flood, that information must go so that it can save lives, save people. So this kind of binding that India has also becomes an advantage.
Yes, but sir, do you think those rules are mentioned by the UN about an upper riparian state not taking advantage of its position? How applicable is it to this situation, that is where India has suspended the Indus Waters Treaty, and there is so much enmity between two countries, and they are trying to look at this situation as a one-upmanship against the other? Do you think those rules will apply in this case?
So there are 2-3 points here. One, treaty per se has no exit clause. It is treaty in perpetuity. That means either it is there or it is not there. There is no middle. For it not to be there means one of the parties should have reneged on it. Okay. What we are today is neither of these two. We are neither abrogated, we are neither suspended. We are held in abeyance, held it in abeyance. Now, the water in Indus water basin has been a subject of discussion for many years between India and Pakistan. And one of the reasons why this treaty came into being is the fear that Pakistanis have that India will somehow stop the water and we will be deprived and we will land up in a situation where our land will become dry. Now, it's an hypothetical situation, which is almost, it is like it's a dream, wishing for it, and it's about to be
a nightmare
that about to get true.
Yes.
So Pakistan's nightmare has come to be true only because of its own doing. The politics of Pakistan vis-a-vis India is the principal reason why it has happened. Where will it go is another question.
So, as you mentioned, that the division of the waters is not to India's advantage. 80% of the water flows into Pakistan, 20% comes to India. So there's some archival data that suggests that because India in the 1960s was suffering from some sort of a dollar financial crisis, that India was sort of forced into signing such an unfair treaty where, its own national interests were not taken into consideration. So what are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts are quite different from what you said. And to understand the gravity of this treaty, one has to understand some basic elements. One, I've told you before, that every country has a right to natural resource. So whether you liked it or not, arbitrarily, if the treaty was not there, water would still flow into Pakistan at some level. Now, how much should flow is a matter of conjecture. Figuratively speaking, or arithmetically, 80% of these water is going into Pakistan and 30% is coming to India. 20% is coming to India. In terms of ratio and numbers, it looks very badly skewed in favor of Pakistan.
Yes.
But in reality, that is not the case, is my perception. I'll try and explain this to you. The situation that Pakistan is in is that its 80% dependence is on these three rivers only. Should you, hypothetically again, stop the water, Pakistan will dry out and end as a desert within a matter of few months or years. Because 80% of its existence for water needs are fed through the IWT western rivers. Okay. That's not the case in India.
Okay.
In India, at best, it is Punjab and J&K. Punjab has its share of waters, it will survive. Whereas Pakistan would not survive. Given that situation, if you were friends, suppose you were friends, hypothetically, we were not, or if you're a humanitarian, you will realize that whosoever signed that, of course, Pandit Nehru was the person, he would have taken that into consideration, that somewhere we can't be unfair to a country which is going to rely entirely on that water. The second part of this story was, having given the rights to use western waters with certain riders, which I can come to later, India got the exclusive right to use eastern rivers, which was, although only 20%, 33 MF, but what it did was it gave them a period of complete freedom to do what they wanted on the eastern rivers. Imagine a situation where we were in dispute. We would not have been able to construct Bhakra Nangal, Ranjit Sagar Dam, Pong Dam, any one of these dams which led to the Green Revolution in Punjab. It could not have happened because it would have been a constant state of dispute. So it could be stated at that point in time, while mathematically the ratio was hugely skewed, but on a peace and stability metrics, India bought a lot of peace and a lot of progress in Punjab. So that's how I look at it.
So from what you said, it can be deduced that it was not that big of a problem for India or Pakistan, the division of waters. So where is the conflict? If we discuss before Pahalgam, there were still certain problems that India was facing within the Indus Waters Treaty. What were these problems that India was facing? Was it Pakistan's approach to these problems that was a bother, or what was it?
So Pakistan, it's a good question, and it's a question that probably many are asking. Pakistan suffers from the India syndrome. So Pakistan would not like to see India prosper at any rate. Now, whether it is genuine, whether it is perceived, whether it is just a figment of own imagination out of nowhere, that's a call only Pakistanis can take. But in this particular case, Pakistan was constantly under the fear that someday India will stop water. So when you start playing on that fear actually takes you to a situation where everything appears to be fearful to you. Now, I left it last time and I said that the rivers in the north, that is western rivers, have right to flow into Pakistan with a certain conditions, which is usage of that water for needs of people of J&K, for purpose of irrigation, for daily needs, hydroelectricity, and also a certain amount of storage, which is 3.6 MAF. Okay. Now, if you want to generate hydroelectricity, what is the natural recourse? You'll build a dam. Moment India started building any dam, Pakistan is shouting hoarse in every forum that it can find itself in that India is trying to stop water because the fear is playing on them. When you start doing that, every time when India takes up a project, India within the precincts of the treaty, you go to the 3-tier mechanism. So first there is this Indus Water Commission. It doesn't meet. Then you go to neutral expert. There also it doesn't meet. Then you go to a quota arbitration. Pakistan has done that thrice and lost thrice. Okay. Now the fourth time, it's in trouble because people understand that every time India takes up a project for its own good within the precincts of the boundaries of the treaty, you are raising a red flag. And that is where this problem has started. India had given Pakistan adequate warning that now the treaty needs to be renegotiated. It is no more the treaty that is living to the existing time because things have changed, times have changed, populations increased. Silting has been one of the major problems. So in the provisions of the treaty, when dams were built, the arbitration was more on that India was not allowed to have sluice gates.
Okay.
So what sluice gate does, it takes out the silt, thereby keeping the pondage or the water storage almost constant. So if you don't allow it, what will happen is silt will take the better part of
You'll
the
not be
area,
able
and
to
you'll
store
not be
enough
able-
water.
So such things led to belief by Indians that Pakistanis are only trying to obstruct primarily because it helps them. It helps them to ensure that J&K through which these waters are flowing does not get its adequate resource of water in terms of either hydroelectricity or irrigation. And that is where this set of problems started and has led to this
So
current situation.
my follow-up question to this is that now we know that Pakistan is constructing major dams in seismic zones, and whereas India is left with run-of-the-river projects. So what are the flood risks here? How does the treaty permit any sort of storage mechanism on the Indian part? What's the situation in that
So
case?
I'll take your question in a larger perspective and try and explain to your viewers as to what is the situation of water in Pakistan. Okay. So Pakistan suffers from multiple problems. One problem I have told you that 80% dependence on Indus water
The
which are
three
coming from
rivers,
this.
yeah.
The second problem is Pakistan groundwater table has either been eroded so badly that the aquifers have gone down deep or they have been hugely polluted. Now, every country relies on groundwater for its either daily needs or irrigation. Pakistan has rendered itself in a situation where it can no more use effectively its groundwater because it's hugely salinated, it's hugely arsenic, many other things. And more than that, it's gone very deep. It's not commercially so viable. So that is the state of Pakistan as far as the water table is concerned. Should India have blocked, like it once again stated, any supply of water going into Pakistan, Pakistan will become a dry land with nothing of its own. So when the treaty was envisaged, in the treaty, Pakistan was given 900 million US dollars for compensating the flow of water which was stopped by the eastern rivers. This 900 million was used by Pakistan to build two very major dams, Tarbela and Mangla Dam. Now, these are two very important dams which caters for almost, I think, 50 to 60% of irrigation in Punjab and Sindh, which would have been earlier done by the eastern rivers. So this money was given by the World Bank to Pakistan to build these dams, and they are huge dams. They have almost together, I think, 20 MAF capacity or even more, if I'm not sure. Now, these dams have become a must for Pakistan's existence. But the problem with Pakistan, once again, is they are heavily silted now. So the water levels, quantum of water levels, the quantum of water because of silt is reduced. The fear that India will stop and the fear that the water is reducing has led them to build newer dams. Newer dams in areas where what you said may not be
Seismic zones.
Yeah. So what does it do? It doesn't want to mend fences with India, which should have been the best option.
Yeah, first step.
First option.
Yeah.
Mend fence with India, be friends and enjoy the benefits. But that they don't want to do. They want to be on the other side. They want to sponsor terrorism into India. So it's like, the saying, you stay in water and you become an enemy of the alligator. How does it work? It doesn't work. And that is why the multiple problems that Pakistan cycle of problems that it goes through.
So you mentioned World Bank, and World Bank was the chief mediator for Indus Waters Treaty. So World Bank has also been instrumental for Pakistan in construction of its dams. Do you think its neutrality is in question here? Should India resort to other multilateral frameworks now?
So no, the World Bank was instrumental only in mediating, drawing the charter of the treaty, ensuring that the treaty gets the correct data, and funding what was promised in the treaty. Thereafter, the arbitration mechanism was not with World Bank. It's with a court of arbitration. It could have links to the World Bank, but it's a court of arbitration which World Bank controls. But there are two mechanisms before that. Now, if you see a conflict between India and Pakistan, you would realize, and the the least recent Operation Sindhu should tell you, that the world tends to favor Pakistan much more than it tends to favor
They're better
India.
at us at constructing a narrative.
Whether it is that or whether it suits the world to have a state like Pakistan, to further their own agendas, it's a matter of speculation and conjecture, and I can have a debate on that. It is in the same manner that the World Bank constantly wishes to keep Pakistan on the right side, even if it is at a little more cost to India. So for Indians, the World Bank will always appear to be skewed a little bit towards the Pakistanis. But the problem that probably you have not described is today we have landed up in a situation where now World Bank is under a dilemma that the last of the dam project is under a situation where India's appeal is with a a neutral observer, and Pakistan has appealed in the court of arbitration.
Okay.
The World Bank has held up both of them, appointed a neutral observer also, and asked the court of arbitration also to look into the. India has appealed on this very technical reason that you cannot have the three ladders of the mechanism, two of them operate simultaneously. What if one gives in favor of India and other gives in favor of Pakistan? How would you settle the dispute? And that is the reason India is saying, please renegotiate the treaty and let's have better understanding of this treaty and better mechanisms to deal with. The current mechanism is not acceptable to us. So World Bank is silent. They haven't come back to us, which has ultimately led to this held in abeyance situation.
Held in abeyance, I'm using that word, borrowing it from you. So after the Pahalgam attack, India put the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. What is it in the treaty that prevents India from using the IWT, from using it as a deterrence against Pakistan? And leading to another question is, how do we prevent the weaponization of water on humanitarian grounds within IWT?
So, both the questions contradict each other in the
Yes.
sense that you use one, you invoke the other.
Yeah.
Weaponization of water in the IWT treaty is very simple. By each one of them, each one of us can do that. In a way, Pakistan has already weaponized it. And to give you an example, I'm just elaborating on what I said earlier. Their constant interference with whatever India does on the western rivers is a weaponization of sort because it hinders the development in J&K. So without spending money, actually J&K has remained the same, which is playing into the narrative of Pakistan that J&K is an underdeveloped state under India. You are making it happen by constantly interfering with it. Okay. As far as India is concerned, what stops us is this morality that we do not want the lower riparian neighbor to suffer on account of something which we will hold ourselves morally irresponsible. We don't want to do that. Till a stage is forced on you to state that you have practically left with no. See, what has happened is Indus Water River was not an issue which was politically linked between what was happening between India and Pakistan, and the 4 wars that we have fought bears testimony to it. It is held. It is held not on account of Pakistan. It is surviving on account of India. India could have very well abrogated it long time back. Okay, but it has held good because India has been a good neighbor. Nobody is recognizing that fact. So now when you suspending held in abeyance or abrogating it, Pakistan is telling everyone, look. But the world should question, or UN or World Bank should question, what responsibility does Pakistan have? Now let's realize it in this way. Actually speaking, if India today, even if abrogates, it is not, abrogates, the best that can happen is every forum in the world will condemn India. India would be at the backlist of every sanction list, everything. But yet Pakistan will continue to suffer. It's not going to, solve their problem. So I just cannot understand the rationale that taking India on an IWT matter and not reconciling with it is like, you're stabbing your neighbor, you're stabbing yourself too.
Yeah.
So that's the situation they are in. Now, India is at loss of thought. How do you get the neighbor to understand the basic that be friendly neighbor, be good neighbor, and be happy about it? You don't want to be happy yourself and don't want your neighbor to be happy too. So it's nothing but a crab mentality.
So you saying India is at a loss of thought, but what are your thoughts? There's no exit clause in IWT. This putting the treaty in abeyance is setting a global precedent. But India does have a moral justification of Pakistan sponsoring terrorism into India. Wouldn't that hold as a justification?
So Operation Sindoor has very categorically, stated to the whole world that it has no justification. Because if it had justification, you would have some people supporting you. It took Indian delegations to go abroad and convince everybody. Do you really think it requires convincing? You mean to say the countries in the world do not know where Osama bin Laden was hiding and who was supporting? If you have proof like this happening and yet you turn a blind eye, there is no rationale to this whole story. So India is feeling peeved about it, very natural. The problem is India is in a situation, what do you do? Now, abrogating the TT is not the answer because you got to have a mechanism by which there is some solution to the problem. I mean, if my personal opinion is, if I was in the government, I would say, I don't want to stop water with Pakistan. I just want to tell them, please stop playing with us. Now, suppose held in abeyance, what does it mean? It means that we will not stop the water going to Pakistan's share. I don't think that is on the radar or the horizon of the decision makers. It only means is, morally we are bound to tell you something, we will not tell you. Now it is entirely up to you how to tackle it. Suppose I want to stop water for a particular reason in India, I do it for 2 days, I release it after 2 days. So nobody is counting how much of water is going on a daily basis. It's the total quantum of water maybe in a month or something that you count. You say, okay, you will get your share of water. But how and when do I release it is also an advantage that India has, and Pakistan has to realize that fact that within the precincts of this treaty we can do this. If you understand this, then you will talk to us. You don't want to understand it and you want to go to every arbitration committee in the world. At the end of the day, what is going to happen is India has gained enough economic might to say we will stand on our own. So if you don't understand our problem, so be it. That's my opinion on this.
So there's a elephant in the room when it comes to this relationship, that is China. So coming to that, China is developing a sort of Indus headwaters with Pakistan system. So this conflict with Pakistan that India is having on IWT, would it sort of they are already together in a lot of cases, but would it sort of encourage that relationship to deepen? And another thing is, we are an upper riparian state in this context. We have had this conversation before, but with China, India is the lower riparian state. So how do you see this playing out with such a big neighbor out there who's also not exactly our friend?
So the India-China-Pakistan relationship, a lot of it is, you have to hypothesize what could happen. What would happen is different. Of course, Operation Sindoor has given some contours to this whole story. But selling weapons and treating or distribution of water are entirely two different ball games altogether. We are lower riparian as far as China is concerned, and there is no doubt of it. All fears that we have done to Pakistan, China could do to India. Absolutely no denial of that fact. China could do to India. But the problem is India is not Pakistan vis-a-vis IWT and vis-a-vis China and Brahmaputra. India could very well survive with what China does. And for the benefit of those who don't know, China's contribution to Brahmaputra is only 30 to 35%. It is 60 to 65% of water in Brahmaputra actually accumulates once it flows into India. Okay. So at best, China would be able to stop 30. But the problem is not stopping. Stopping is not really the worry. The problem is flooding. You could start flooding yet everything has a cost. The Great Bend, as they are called, where the Yalup Sonko takes a bend and comes into India, it's a great advantage to China at that point. It can do what it wants. But it's the worst seismic belt.
Okay.
Any construction there is at the cost of China. It's not at the cost of India. So China could try it. China could try it even at Sutlej in the north. It's Sutlej and Indus in north.
Mm-hmm.
And not that they don't have. They have a mechanism. It's not so easy to do exactly how that we cannot stop water in the western rivers because we don't have the storage. Similarly, in high altitudes, storage of water is a great problem. You cannot do it. So while hypothetically or theoretically it is possible for China, but the after effects are not going to be as devastating for India as it is for Pakistan. And also there is angle of the lower riparian countries like Bangladesh and Myanmar, who are by and large better terms with China than they are with India. If India is troubled, they will be more troubled.
Okay. So moving away from foreign policy, so climate change. Climate change has affected the flow of Sutlej. It has led to glacial retreat. It has affected the rainfall patterns. So in that context, how important or how crucial is the IWT, or is it obsolete?
So IWT, obsolescence and climate change, you have to deal it a little separately. IWT is not obsolete, but IWT becomes redundant if climate change is not incorporated. Now, when in 1960 we signed on IWT, at that point in time, resolving matter was most important. Nobody looked 60 years down the line what will happen, like I mentioned to you earlier one day. Everyone thought something will come, wishful thinking will take over and will become more
optimism prevailed.
Even if you wanted, you could not have realized how climate change will affect flow of water into these rivers. I have stated before also that we have no capacity to hold water in the northern rivers. So what will happen? We'll let it flow. India will get inundated for sure. Pakistan will also get inundated for sure. So unless Pakistan allows some mechanism for India to store water, their miseries will be far more purely on account of glaciers melting, which is the climate change. Now, the treaty in its form, it's so inflexible. It does not have any clause that you can change it or you can modify it or you can put any other clause in it. That is one of the principal reasons that India is debating and asking, let's review the treaty. India is not saying we don't want to have the treaty. They're saying let's review the treaty so that it meets our requirements, it meets future requirements. And climate change is current but also future. In future is going to be far more devastating than it is in current. You don't look at today, the treaty today, future the treaty will not exist because it is out of your control. Today it is still within somebody's control. Tomorrow it will be out of control. So that is the primary reason why India is insisting, please do have a review. And again, if you ask my guest, which you didn't, but I will tell you that there is no other choice. If the treaty has to survive, it has to be modified. It has to be reviewed through a different prism altogether. But for that to happen, Pakistan must get sense in their head that fighting and opposing is not the answer to the story. Corroborating and collaborating is the way to go forward. It's the mutual benefit. But I hope some good sense will prevail through some good people.
Sense would prevail. We all hope so and pray for it every day. Thank you, General Gadkari, for enlightening us with your thoughts on this crucial matter. Thank you for watching this episode. This was the third episode of PIC's Global Compass. We'll bring you another episode in the next few months, and keep following us on all our social media handles. Till then, bye-bye.